Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us on this lovely Wednesday evening. For those that are on the East Coast, we'll try to get through this in time efficient manner to get you to bed. For those on the West Coast, maybe finishing up practice. Thank you for joining us. Glad we offered the second session and this is so well attended. My name is Brett Gorman. I'm the director of High Performance Pathways, and this is our fourth USRowing Pathways webinar. We did one in November overviewing the entire program. We did a second one in December that was highlighting the U19 system. Last night we had our Para Pathways webinar, and tonight we're going to focus on U23s. One thing I want to note, Rowing News actually coincidentally came out with an article today that Yosi, our Chief High Performance Officer, myself, and Chris Chase were all interviewed for. I think it gives a great glimpse into what we're working towards and what we're trying to achieve here. So if you haven't had a chance to look at that, highly recommend it. I'm going to be monitoring the chat as we go, but also since we've already done this once tonight, I predict that we have a pretty good idea of what questions we're going to get, and hopefully we'll be able to use our time very efficiently. So yeah, we're going to be doing a little bit of review of the Pathways program for those that weren't able to join our previous webinars. We're going to talk about the U23 system goals. I'm going to ask Yosi to chime in for that. We are also joined by our under 23 head coaches tonight. So I will also ask for them to chime in when we go through the camp details for the 2024 summer camps. And then we should have a little time for Q&A. It was very tight on the previous one. I'm hoping that having done this once before will be a little bit more efficient. Great. I am going to launch just a quick poll, just because I would love to get a idea of who we have with us tonight, what part of the U23 space you occupy. It should be coming up on your screen right now. If you are an athlete, a Coxen, collegiate coach, high performance club coach, a parent, please go ahead and start filling that out. The second question is just would love to know if you've been on a previous webinar with us, because that will help me in terms of how much time I need to spend on recapping. Great. Oh, you guys are on it. We're getting through this nice and quickly. Good job. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right, I'm going to end the poll in 3. Oh, wow, you guys are everybody answered. Love it. Great. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. So what I see, we have mostly athletes, which is similar to the previous one. Couple Coxens, couple college coaches, high performance club coach, a parent or two. I'm always curious what other is. Yeah, maybe club leaders, who knows, USRowing staff, potentially. Maybe my counterparts are on here. But great. All right. Thank you for doing that efficiently. I think we're already ahead of schedule. We're going to start with introductions. I've introduced myself. First, I'm going to turn to Yosi, our Chief High Performance Officer. Yosi, you want to come on and say hi and talk about how long you've been our fearless leader leading this program?
Well, fearless forever. Leader, yeah. My name is Yosi. I'm your Chief High Performance Officer. Basically means I'm in charge of high performance. And I've been here since the beginning of 22. After Tokyo, I thought it might be a good idea to come to the United States and see whether we can build some great results and a good program. So that's me.
Great. Thank you. Next, I want to welcome to the webinar our head women's U23 coach. She'll be heading up both sculling and sweep and running this camp out of Dartmouth, but current Oklahoma head coach, Sarah Trowbridge. Sarah, you want to give us a little bit overview of your involvement with USRowing over the years?
Hi, I'm happy to join again. And I was an athlete making my first team in 2007 and finishing up in 2012. And then began coaching for USRowing in 2015 and have done it in a few different ways, including my first under 23 experience was being an assistant, like a volunteer assistant with Wyatt for men's under 23. So happy to be here. Great.
And then coming off of a women's 8 world championship last year in Plovdiv.
So. Yeah, and a 4 bronze. Yeah.
And the 4 bronze. Yeah, great. Great to have you here with us. Next, I'm going to go to our sculling men's head coach, Craig Hoffman, who will be running that camp out of Conshohocken, Pennsylvania for the 3rd year running. Craig, welcome. Thanks for joining us. Please tell us your involvement with USRowing.
I've been involved with USRowing since the early 90s. I was the high performance committee chair for 15 years. and a sculling coach, always through trials from the 90s and under 23 and a senior team in 2012. And that's it.
Great. Well, happy to have you with us. And last, we'll go to our head men's sweep coach, Wyatt Allen, current head coach for the Dartmouth Openweight men. And we'll be heading up our sweep program there. And Wyatt, would you also like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Yeah, my association with USRowing started as a collegiate athlete, rowing on 2 Nations Cup teams in 2000, 2001. That became my pathway to the senior team. I rowed on the senior team from 2002 until 2008. Started coaching with USRowing in the under 23 group in 2014 and coached 14, 15, and 16. Took a couple years off. Have assisted the teams in various ways over the past 2 years, traveling to Varese in 2022 and supporting John Graves and Trevor last year. So happy to be back involved, happy to be working with the sweep group and excited for the summer.
Great. And I just want to take a moment to thank you all for signing on for this summer. And, you've all been involved for years, and I'm really excited about the staff we've assembled. So thank you very much. And for making yourselves available. I know you all have other duties with your current crew. So we appreciate you being here. Okay, we'll just do some brief previous webinar takeaways from especially the 11:15 webinar. That recording is available on the USRowing website. So if you're unfamiliar with pathways, like what the heck is this? I highly recommend you watch that in addition to potentially checking out the Rowing News article that I mentioned. In a nutshell, it's right from Yosi, one pathway, there are different pathways to get there, but all stemming from our high performance team that Yosi heads up, our current Olympic training pool that he's working with. He just came back from an altitude camp in Colorado Springs. Now all those athletes are down in Sarasota preparing for the winter speed order. And how are we scaling what's happening with that group, with those athletes to the U23 space, the U19 space, and really creating one system where we're tracking athletes over time. And by the time they get to Yosi, the goal of Pathways is that they're familiar already with what they're going to be doing, the testing protocols, how they're going to be training, the technique that they're going to be rowing, that it's not new to them right after they graduate college, that they are already familiar. So that's our long-term goal. This is another in a nutshell. This was featured in the Rowing News article. How do we provide our developing and emerging athletes with foundation and different pathways, different routes to both international achievement, personal growth and development. And the way we're going to achieve this is through transparency and communication. That's why we're doing these webinars, collaboration with our stakeholders and with our partners, high performance club partners, collegiate coaches. We consider you our partners as well. And of course, our athletes. And doing so through education, sharing of information, making information readily available for those who want to learn about the system that Yosi has been implementing. So how is this specific to U23? U23 pathways goals, and we're going to go to the man himself. Yosi, would love to hear your perspective on the U23 pathway, how you see it fitting into the greater system.
Yeah. So unfortunately, you witnessed my first speech. So before when you're talking about the 2 slides previous, you took away lots of the things that I want to say, except for one thing. You say once they arrive with Yosi, but it's not true. I'm responsible for the entire pipeline. I do not. So it might be that it's further away. It seems further away, but basically to me it's all the same. If you talk about juniors, if you talk about under 19, under 23, or elite athletes, what we have is just one spectacular road, and what we want to do is to help people to come from the beginning, make the steps, and get to the end. And so my responsibility is to make sure that we create touching points with the athletes, that we involve athletes in the program in a way that on one hand we are able to ID, on the other hand we are able to teach, plus that we deliver a great experience, because it's not about the goal, it's about the process. So my job is to make sure that the process is transparent, that people enjoy the voyage, and that they hopefully also have a happy ending, but that's a different thing. So that's more or less what I try to achieve with under 23 and under 19. Create one visible and achievable pathway for people. Everybody should be able to understand. Everybody should be able to be part of that. And obviously, not everyone will go to the Olympics, but that's the HP part of my job. I just prepare a system, and then people themselves have to make, to create their own dreams, make them happen.
Thanks, Yosi. And I think that's a great distinction to make, that it's not that you're not involved until the until you get to that Olympic training pool, that's really what Pathways is about, is that you touch every part of it. And the more athletes are involved, whether at the U19 level or the U23 level, additional touch points along that pathway. Excellent. Great. So I think this is a visual representation of a lot of what we're talking about, the high performance training education that we're making accessible at every level, long-term data tracking. There's another slide that we'll talk a little bit about testing that we'll be doing and how we're tracking athletes over time. And then of course, yes, U23 does also have an international race component that really is the start, could be the start of a journey. We definitely don't see that as an end point for any athlete. The goal is that athletes continue along the pathway. Mentioned testing. This visual is of the senior group doing lactate testing in Colorado Springs at altitude camp just last week. Very exciting felt very privileged to be able to witness that and see it in action at the highest level. We're also implementing this at the U19 and U23 level. I'll briefly touch on the application deadline for all U23 US rowing camps is March 20th. And by then you need to have a current 2K and 6K score for that application. Those are requirements. We often get questions about the 6K. What if my program doesn't do one? Less so at U23. I think at the U23 level, collegiate level, we see more people doing 6Ks. But in the event that your program doesn't do a 6K test regularly, does a 5K, does a 20-minute, get with your coach. Make sure you're getting one on the calendar, because that is a requirement for 6K. At camp, there will be a 2K test within a few days of arrival. Sarah, what day did you do that for camp last summer?
I think we did it on the third day, third or fourth.
Day. Pretty early on. Craig, same with you, I believe, for the quad camp. Third day. Yep. So that will happen, pretty early on. And then we will run all athletes at camp through lactate step testing. And the goal with incorporating that testing at every level is that it's going to give us more data points over time. And that was one of the things that I really enjoyed being in Colorado Springs last week with Yosi, him taking me through some of the athlete profiles of, where were they testing a year ago? What did the test look like in August, gearing up for the World Championships, and then November, and then now. So the more data points we have, the more information we have to better gauge athletes' training, what their zones should be, and train them more effectively. So we're starting that at every level. Want to just briefly go through some athlete examples. I think it's, see it to be it, I think is always important. I've tried to do a little bit of a spectrum. We're not going to spend too much time on this. First, I'll highlight Claire Collins, who's someone who, has come through the system, both at the U19 level. She was a standout at Deerfield Academy. I believe she was a 4-sport athlete, and rowing was one she definitely excelled at, making the U23 team for multiple seasons. Went on to the U23 team, won some medals with the U23 team, and then made the Tokyo Olympics in the women's 4, and is currently part of the Olympic training group, striving to make the Paris team. We'll know about that in the next couple months, very, very soon, which is very, very exciting. On the men's side, I'm excited to include Justin Best. I told him last week that we were incorporating him into some of these presentations, and I loved his comment. He's like, well, when I win Olympic gold, then you can put me as the poster child of the system. I'll be the system kid. But something I really appreciate about Justin, especially talking to coaches that were involved in his U19 experience, including current men's head coach Eric Gerke, was that he wasn't necessarily a standout out of the gate. He was someone who developed a little bit later in high school and didn't make the world's team in 2014, was part of the Canamex group. And I think 2K wise was not super impressive, but stuck with it, kept training, ended up making the under 23 team, coming away with some medals from those events. And then again, the 2020 Olympic team, and currently part of our senior team pool striving for Paris. So similar to Claire, but different, and someone who, everyone develops at different points. And our goal with Pathways is to create multiple entry points for people through the system, which is why I also wanted to include Charlotte, because Charlotte Buck, who is currently part of our Olympic training pool, was a walk-on in the collegiate space. She walked on at Columbia, and in 2017 came to U23 camp. And I remember Charlotte very well from that, and really wasn't quite at the level at that point. She had a lot of work to do. She had some good erg numbers, but especially in regards to small boat moving, wasn't quite there. And after she got cut from from the 2017 camp, she went and started training at New York Athletic Club, got a small boat a lot, and eventually worked her way back into the Princeton training group to make the Tokyo Olympic team. And again, she's currently training and down in Sarasota, preparing for winter speed orders and Olympic selection. So different pathway. And the goal, there's a reason why it's plural, pathways. There's not one. Okay, then we're gonna get right to the meat of the presentation, which is talking through our camp options this summer. And I'm gonna invite our head coaches to give their viewpoints on how they see camp, and especially drawing on past experiences, since we have such an experienced staff. I will first start though with outlining the application process, because that's a little different than years past. And so we'll get right to that. How do I get identified and selected for camp? We are running everything through the USRowing member portal. If you were on any of the previous webinars, this came up. If you're confused about this, please go back and watch that webinar from the 15th, November 15th, because I spend multiple slides on this. But essentially, when you go to usrowing.org, in the upper right-hand corner, there's a login. That's where you put in your member number, your password. Hopefully you know those things. If not, please contact member services. When you go in there, there's a button that says Edit Profile. That's step 2. Click on Edit Profile. Within there, then there's an athlete profile section that will take you to this screen that I have a screenshot here of. This is where you put in all of your athlete metrics. This is where we're going to put in the 2K, the 6K, the 1 minute, the 3x10. We are no longer doing that test. And that actually, I think as of Friday, will no longer be on there. It'll be replaced by a 100-meter test that we have protocols for, that we will be sending out. It's already been sent out through the whole U19 system, and we'll send it out through all the coach associations. And also it's posted on the website currently for how to do that 1 minute max watt test, as well as the 100-meter test. The great thing about everything being stored in your member profile is you have control over updating that, and you can keep it up to date. The moment you have a PR, the moment you have a new score, it can go in here, and it's a direct link into our identification pool. So you want to keep that information updated regularly. How is this going to factor into the application? So historically, we've used, whether it's a Jot form or a Google form, it's a new spreadsheet that you have to input all of your data. Again, your height, your weight, your 2K, and every time you apply for a camp, you have to input that information. What's great about it all living in the member portal is you just have to keep it there, because our camp application, when you scroll below your athlete data, you're going to see 2 windows. The first one is going to ask you if you want to be part of the USRowing Pathways program. If you're on this webinar, I assume as an athlete that you're going to click yes, because that puts you on the list, that you're interested in any level of camp. You have interest to continue maybe post-collegiately or in the summer. And that's a list that we can pull from to send out messages. For example, like, oh, hey, here's the watt testing protocol. Here's, here's some more information about lactate step testing. So you want to be on that list. So make sure you click yes. Below that is where you will find any camp application available. For the U23 space, the only one that's available right now is our 2024 U23 team summer camp application. That is for all of the USRowing summer camps that we are sponsoring. You will also see, as of next week, a para dev camp application that's available for U23s as well. If you were a U19 athlete, it wouldn't say U23 team application, it would say U19 team, because we do it by birthday. We do it by the year that you were born. Okay. The form that's embedded here for the U23 summer camp is only asking questions specific to this summer. It's going to ask, yes, we ask for your member number so that we can link to your member profile. It's going to ask about your sculling experience, because we're gauging, okay, who should be in a sculling boat and who should potentially be sweeping this summer. It's going to ask, yes, your current affiliation. It's going to ask questions like, are you thinking of going to trials? Because there is the option to go to trials and then go to selection camp this summer, because it's a longer summer. More on that later. It's going to ask if your team may be going to Henley this summer. So again, that's particular information for this summer. Your athlete metrics, your height, your weight, your 2K, all that, we're going to pull from your profile. So a question I get all the time is, should I wait to fill out the application until I have current PRs? No. The answer to that is no, because you can fill this out today and all you have to do is keep your athlete metrics up to date, because when the application deadline of March 20th comes around, we will pull your data from there. Okay, so that data lives in there. You have control over it. You input it, it gets you on the list, it helps you get identified, it supports your application for coming to summer camp, and it's in one centralized data storage that will be tracked. You know, if you did it as a U19 athlete, like many of our U19s are doing now, U23, and then we'll be able to see that data over time, which is really, really cool. Since we started this in November, we're up to over 1,000, I think about 1,250 through 1,300 athletes who have filled it out. The bulk are U19, U23s. We need you. We need to get those numbers up. We haven't been publicizing it as much to the collegiate space. So this is our campaign. Get it in your athlete profile. Interested at all? Make sure you fill out that athlete profile. I am actually shocked that I haven't gotten a question yet about how Coxens get identified. On the previous webinar, within 5 minutes of starting, it was how do Coxens get identified and invited for camp? It's a great question. We do have a formal process that we're following for U19 and U23. Within that U23 application that I was just talking about, there is also some Coxen specific questions. It'll ask, are you applying as a Coxen? You click yes or no. If you click yes, it will take you to the Coxen questions. We are asking for a maximum 2-minute race recording. Why 2 minutes? We feel that's enough time to get a feel for your racing and to hear you and listen to you. If for the U19 applications last year, we got over 200 recordings, and U23 we received quite a few too. So we're only asking for 2 minutes. It doesn't have to necessarily be a race. It could be a competitive practice situation, but it has to have side-by-side action. It cannot be a head race or a time trial. We want to know how you are under pressure with other boats around you and delivering the right information that your crew needs to know. What do you sound like in that situation? Okay, so a 2-minute race situation recording. There is also a link to a coach nomination form that you need to send to your coach and have your coach fill out. It will ask for your coach to put your name, rank on your team. Are you the first Coxen? Are you the second Coxen within your program? If you're the second, we ask why. Why are you not number one? Is it just a question of the person above you is aged out of U23? You're both seniors. You know, we want to know that information. It's going to ask to rank you on 5 different areas in terms of your Coxen skill. We're hopeful that you'll be able to use this actually as a developmental tool, not just for U23s, but within your own programs. You know, go have a dialogue with your coach. How are you ranking me on these things? What can I do to improve? Okay. And those will be heavily weighted with issuing invitations. So you submit those requirements, the application, the 2-minute recording, and the coach nomination form. We then now have a Coxen selection committee. This is comprised of our athletes who are currently in our Olympic training pool, including our PR3 Coxen, Emily Eldratcher, has already been selected. She's going to the Paralympics. She's heavily involved in this committee, and then other Coxens that are also competing for spots in Paris will be are a part of this selection committee. So they will listen to the recordings. They will look to the coach nomination forms, and they will filter those out, rank them, and send them to Sarah and Wyatt for coaches for the Coxen slots to make recommendations. Sarah and Wyatt will make those final determinations, but we're going to use this Coxen selection committee to help get some more information to those coaches and help iron out the process a little bit. Okay, great. Next. What are we looking for? And I'm going to actually turn to Wyatt and Sarah on some of the things they listen for. Here are some of the things that the Coxen committee has outlined. But Wyatt, I'm going to come to you first this time. What do you listen for when you're listening to a Coxen recording? What are you looking for a U23 Coxen?
Yeah, I'm looking, I guess I listen to it through the lens of an athlete, right? I kind of put myself back in the boat and I listen and first I'm trying to figure out if this is someone I'd want to row for, right? Is this person motivating? Are the calls clear, concise, accurate? Is there enough variation in there that it doesn't just become white noise? Sort of all those things. And what I said on the last call an hour ago is, you know, we listen to the recordings and that's important, but to me, it's going to be the coach recommendation and probably a conversation with your coach that's going to be the biggest influence on my selection choices, right?
Yep. Sarah?
I would echo that exactly, like just what he called being what we're listening for in the tape. A lot of it's going to come down to also the coach recommendation and ultimately, who can put it all together and stay in the role throughout their time at camp, as shown by their tapes and by their coach recommendation.
And while we're on it, coach recommendation, phone call, email, either acceptable for the two of you from the coaches?
Yep, just shoot over an email.
Okay.
Yep.
That's in addition to everyone has to do the nomination form, but it doesn't hurt, if your coach is going to put you forward and is highly recommending you, they should, have them reach out to Sarah and Wyatt, please. Okay. Available camps. What are the options? This is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time. Here are the 4 camps for men and women that we are offering this summer. We have our summer selection camps that select crews for the 2024 World Championships. And then we have our selection development camps, which include the women's camp, which we've had for this is the 3rd year for that camp, and the 1st year that we're offering this for men. And I'll get more into that on a subsequent slide. So for our selection camps are selecting crews to go to the 2024 World Rowing Championships in St. Catharines, Ontario. Because it is an Olympic year, this is called Mega Worlds. It combines U19, U23, and non-Olympic senior categories, which now are all lightweight categories. Because it's an Olympic summer, the Olympics are in July. This regatta will occur later in the summer. In August, U23s is typically towards the end of July. And in a Mega World summer, it is in August. And so here we're going August 18th to 25th. So it's a little bit later. The camp boats that we will be selecting for both the men and the women are the 8, the 4, and the quad. So we're going to first talk about the men's suite camp that Wyatt will be the head coach of, and he will be assisted by Trevor Mickelson, who coached the men's 4 last summer to a medal for U23s and is the current lightweight head coach at Dartmouth. And this camp will start, all of our selection camps officially start on July 10th. And selection will run through the end of July. And then once crews are selected, then it's about a 2-week training period before going to Worlds on the 14th. But yeah, Wyatt, would love for you to comment on kind of, what you're looking for, maybe speak a little bit about the ERG standard and how you see things going up in Hanover.
Yeah, I mean, I think this slide covers a lot and is pretty accurate. The thing I'll say is, our goal is to first assemble the best group we can at the selection camp. And then from there, it's to find the fastest 8 and Cox 4 we can from that, right? That in terms of the overall group that we end up inviting, I've been involved enough that I know that every year it's a little bit different, right? We have some years where it seems like there's a bunch of big ergs and experienced guys, maybe guys that are returning. In other years, it feels like the ergs are a little bit slower, or it's a younger group with less experience. It is what it is, right? And we're gonna invite the best group we can, and then try to create the fastest boats we can out of that. I think we'll be doing a lot of rowing in probably Cox 4s, maybe some straight 4s, testing combinations in those smaller boats. Another thing, obviously the goal is to go and have a good performance in St. Catharines, but Yosi and Brett have touched on this. The other goal is to provide a good experience for the sake of contributing to the pipeline, right? I said it when I sort of introduced myself. The Nations Cup, my under 23 experience, that was my gateway. It gave me the confidence, gave me the experience to know that I wanted to try to row at the next level. And certainly, whether the athlete makes a crew this year or doesn't, I want them leaving camp feeling like they learned something and excited for the future. So we're going to do everything we can to provide that experience.
Great. Well said, Wyatt. Thank you. All right. Well, now we'll go to Craig with the Conshohocken Rowing Center running the men's quad this summer for year 3. And, definitely, Craig, I would love for you to touch on why I have an asterisk next to your dates there. Talk a little bit about, how the camp has evolved over the last couple of years and what you're hoping to achieve for 2024.
It's hard to follow Wyatt because we're of the same mindset. We are looking for experienced scullers that can move forward during this span of time that we have them. We are looking for the same type of athletes, 6 minutes and below. We may have in the past maybe a little bit higher on the ERG scores, but over the last 2 years, this is year 3, athletes have started to understand what we're looking for, and when they come in to camp, they have an expectation and a knowledge of what is going to be asked of them. We do have that opportunity of athletes coming in before. So although it's July 10th, we'll be welcoming athletes June 15th. It's not required, but they're making a transition from a year of sweep rowing. And we feel that the more time we have them, whether they start in singles just to go over technique, to follow that, and then we go into the quad, you know, as we start in July.
Great.
We will also be sending some boats to trials. Again, if a boat is going to trials, they have to have the knowledge of what it's not only just winning a race, you have to make a time standard, and we feel good about that. And the other part with the sculling, I feel we've really been supported by USRowing, Yosi, Brett, and kids who are coming to camp now are just excited about, and again, developing and getting into that pipeline for the future. Out of the last 2 years group, there will be about 6 kids at speed orders that have aged out, and they understand the time that they have to put into it if they're going to get to the top rung.
Great. Thanks, Craig. That's awesome to see that so many of those athletes are continuing and will be at winter speed order. That's what we want. That's what we want to see. So I'm going to kick it to Yosi now to talk a little bit about sweep and sculling and, you know, how he sees that fitting into the pathway. You know, it is one application. Within the application, we ask athletes to indicate, you know, which of the camps they're interested. You can select multiple camps. You know, the men are technically separate camps for the quad and the U23 sweep side of things with Wyatt. Yosi, can you speak to how athletes should go about making that decision and where they should, you know, put their energy?
Well, in the end, it's about what is your ambition? Because if you think that it's great to have the international experience, that's one thing, but it's also part of your trajectory to a higher level. And to me, the challenge might be the thing that really brings you forward, because having the capacity to be able to scull, to be able to sweep, to be able to row small boats, to be able to row big boats is something that distinguishes you at a later age. So for now, for the camps, I know that in this case for the men, Wyatt and Craig will have a good discussion about which way to direct people. From my point of view, I would say it's obvious that when you want to scull, you need some experience, but don't look at it as a second chance, as a second-rated choice, because we totally understand that if you feel insecure, that you think that you're much better sweeper than a sculler, you should choose for sweeping. However, if you look at it from a competitive level, it doesn't really matter. It's about the experience and it's about the challenge, and we are making sure that we are developing opportunities for the future. And it's not that the US is going to get their medals in general only in sweep boats. Look at last year's World Championships for the seniors. So we had the men's straight 4 and the women's 8, correct, but you also had a women's light double and a women's double. So basically, and if you look at it, there's same number of medals for sweeping as for sculling. And if you want to be selected at the highest level, it's better for you to have more than just one skill. So from perspective of learning and differential learning, so having different challenges, I think it's good to be open for any choice, and then just rely on the coaches that they'll make the right choices for you.
Thank you, Yosi. That's awesome. It's very helpful. Well, let's go to the women's camp. And women are a little bit different because we are running the sweep and skull all in one camp, all occurring in Hanover. And I'm gonna invite Sarah to come on and talk about, last summer we had both camps in Oklahoma City, and there definitely was overlap. There were some athletes going back and forth. You coached that camp with Riley Dampier heading up the women's quad, and I think it went great, and it was an awesome experience. We're tweaking it a little bit in terms of how we're going to allocate those athletes. But Sarah, I'd love for you to kind of, compare and contrast last year to this year. I think we're going to be carrying forth a lot of similar principles. But yeah, how do you see things going on in Hanover this summer with the women?
Yep, just trying to further what has been building, both before I did it 2 years ago and last year. We got to run those side by side, but still 2 separate camps. And this will just be one step further, where we'll look really to assemble the best group of athletes that show potential and further development. So there'll be a variety of athletes with, some just a few years of rowing experience, some with a lot more, a variety of erg scores, all pretty strong, but definitely variety. And some of them will have hit those scores earlier in the year. Some will get those right at the end. But we're then going to look what combinations can we do to maximize our speed in those boat classes. Really working at how can we have the best performance across the board with these athletes, always providing development, learning opportunities, and playing on that kind of adaptable and competitive mindset that the group brings. Yeah, any other things along those lines I missed?
No, I think just making it clear that, how we're going to allocate what's the priority. The 8 and the quad are the priority boats, with the 4 being for development. Just in case, just so people, it's purposeful, the order that we've written there for that. But I think we'll get into some of the erg score standards, I think, on a later slide when we talk about kind of all of the factors that go into someone getting invited to camp. Thank you. How many athletes will be invited to selection camp? We're shooting for 20 sweepers, 10 scullers, and 3 coxswains per gender. One thing that might affect this slightly is how trials pans out, and we will talk about trials in a few slides on, if we have boats, athletes that have applied to camp, but then end up achieving time standard in trials boats, how that may affect those camp numbers. But this is our target. I think we've already talked about this, sweeping and scull. I think Yosi covered it very well on, that it's about learning and development, and, how many skills can you put in your tool bag if you want to take that sculling challenge. All right, so this is what I was talking about. So erg scores are obviously a key part in how we assess who to invite for these camps, but what other factors are going to factor into decisions? And Craig, I'll come to you first. What other things do you look at when you're applying people for camp? I think we say 6 is the window, is what we're looking for men. I know for sculling, you've had people on both sides of that.
Yes. We look for boat moving skills. I would ask for some video, unless an athlete can come in and spend a weekend. If not, we do rely on the video because we want to see how they're moving the boat, and if they're coachable. We've had some success with kids who start at a certain level and they're at a much higher level by the end of camp.
Excellent. Wyatt, would you like to chime in on this one? What other thing, I know you've mentioned coach recommendations, what other things are you looking for? Oh, muted, Wyatt.
Thank you. 5 years into the Zoom world, I'm still figuring it out. I was saying that, I think we look at each, athlete that applies sort of holistically and gather all the data we can, and think of, maybe someone who's not quite where we want want them to be on the erg, but they're sitting 6th seat in the middle of a medal winning crew at the IRA. You know, that's obviously, you know, you've earned that seat and performed at a high level. So, you know, someone like that will probably earn an invite, right? You know, I used, you know, one of our own athletes, Billy Bender, who's now training for Paris, you know, as an example. A couple of years ago, he was 606 on the erg, but by far the best boat mover in our program. And I had a conversation with Jesse Foglia, who was coaching the team at the time, and said, look, I know he's not where he needs to be, but I can tell you from you know, the academic year of training, he's the best boat mover we have, and he's probably worth a look. So, you know, we look at each case individually, and again, we're trying to assemble the best group we possibly can. So, you know, we take everything into account.
Sarah, anything to add?
Nope, I think that covers it. Coach recommendation, video, balancing a number of factors.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. I did have a question come in the chat that I'll go ahead and address now, asking if I have an erg test after the deadline, am I still able to submit it? I'll go ahead and answer that. You would need to submit something by the 20th. You need to have an erg test on the books. If you have an updated erg score, you have a test that occurs after that deadline, definitely email the coaches. Email the coaches and let them know. I wouldn't just, you should definitely put it in your profile, but I would also email the coaches so that they're aware, since we will be making decisions fairly soon after that deadline and looking to have invites wrapped up early April. But having said that, and having run, you know, several of the U23 women's camp, there are always people that come on late. And there are always people or coaches that have called and said, hey, this person, like you know, either they didn't apply because they didn't think they were good enough, but they've really come on strong at the end. I know that's happened to me. Wyatt, Sarah, Craig, has that happened to? Yes, I'm seeing nodding from everyone. So I would say, yes, like March 20th might feel really early. We know that athletes will continue to develop. So communicate. We're trying to be as transparent and communicate well with everybody that we're dealing with. And we ask you to do the same. So please let us know. But great question. Okay, we will move forward. All right, we're gonna get into the other camps that I mentioned that are also available this summer. And they're all included in the same application. So we have our under 23 selection development camp layer, target athletes for this. You know, this is meant to be a bridge for athletes who are not developmentally perhaps ready to go and race at Worlds and be part of the selection camp. There will definitely be a focus on skill acquisition in the small boats, process, you know, technique, and how we're going to give athletes the mindset to potentially make future U23 and even future senior teams for that. Okay. I mentioned that we've run the women's camp now for 3 years. The pilot year was in 2022. We ran that down in Jacksonville, Florida, at the same time that we were running U19 high performance camps down there. I think we had about 14 women partake in that camp, some of whom now have matriculated to the under 23 team, which is very cool. I know this camp is run by Kit Bennett and Grace Latz. Grace was involved in that 2022 campaign, and it really was the foundation. USRowing was able to run that camp at a very affordable cost because we were doing it with all of the junior camps, and there were a lot of shared costs that we were able to take advantage of. And we've now moved the camp to Ann Arbor, Michigan at the Washtenaw Rowing Center. And so Kit and Grace will be running that again this summer. The feedback from this camp, the exit surveys from the athletes from 2023 were stellar. Great small boat experience. This group did go on to race at Summer Nationals and come home with some medals. We are tweaking the formula where our selection development camp athletes will be doing an internal speed order. Again, to foster the development. It's about the development. It's not necessarily about getting a medal at a race at the end of this. I have a slide later where I talk about, you know, what is the difference between a camp like this or say a high performance club U23 program, because those are also great options for many, many athletes. This application is the same as the U23 selection camp one, and you can indicate your interest level in attending selection development camp if you are not able to, or if you are not selected for the selection camp that's going to Worlds. I did want to profile one athlete, and actually, I don't know if you guys saw, but Natalie was on the previous webinar because she asked a question, and Natalie Huffer from Notre Dame did attend the 2022 selection development camp in Jacksonville that I was talking about. Then last summer, She did receive an invite to selection camp. She opted to go to trials before selection camp started. She went to Craftsbury for a couple of weeks, which is a high performance club in Vermont. And she trained in the pair and did end up winning the trial. Her boat did not meet the time standard. So then she matriculated to selection camp that summer in Oklahoma and was able to make the women's four and come home with a medal. So I think that's a pretty good example of the role that selection development camp can play for an athlete that maybe needs that small boat experience. I know I was at that camp as well in 2022, and Natalie was an amazing athlete, but definitely needed that small boat experience to become more of a boat mover. Men's camp. So I've mentioned that the women's camp we ran it in 2022, 2023. This is the third year. This is the first year that we're running the men's camp. We are very excited to be offering this. And this will be at the Oklahoma City High Performance Center in Oklahoma City with head coach Justin Stengel, who Justin is currently a coach at Ithaca and will be, was at Syracuse, former national team U23 athlete himself. And he'll be running that with Riley Dampier, who heads up the High Performance Center at OKC. So this is the first year we're doing it. I wouldn't go so far as to call it, a pilot program, because we are full confidence that it's going to be an awesome experience. But because it's being run in Oklahoma, which is a more affordable location than Ann Arbor, Michigan, but also Oklahoma City Training Center, the High Performance Training Center that Riley heads up. They have built strategic partnerships and relationships with local entities in Oklahoma City. So they're able to offer this camp at a very low price point, which we're very thankful for. And those relationships that Oklahoma City, OKC High Performance Center has developed over time is greatly going to benefit this camp. And that's why that camp is so much less. I know that there have been a lot of questions on why is the men's camp half as much as the women's camp. And the cost of the women's camp is how much it costs to run that camp. USRowing does not get revenue from either of these camps. Okay. This is the development for athletes. And we're very fortunate that we have a partner in Oklahoma City that's able to offer this at a very affordable price point. So we're very excited about that. I think I've addressed this. Why is it? First year, we're really excited, but an Oklahoma's High Performance Center is helping us out with leveraging many of their key partnerships. All right, so this is a question I definitely want to get into. Is it better to go to selection development camp or a high performance club program that will go to more races, including trials? Craig mentioned that Coxen Rowing Center will be going to trials. And I'm going to give kind of an annoying answer. It depends. It depends on where you are in your development and what you need. If you're an athlete who is, maybe struggling to get in top boats because maybe you have the athlete metrics, you have the erg score, you have the size, but you're not moving small boats very well, I think selection development camp is a great fit for an athlete like that. If you're someone who has rowed for a long time, potentially rowed at the U19 level, has a lot of small boat experience, and really wants to get some racing in the summer, then high performance clubs are a great option for you. Some of the ones I've listed here, Orion up in Saratoga, California Rowing Club in Oakland supports U23 athletes. We've already talked about Craig's program that he runs, Craftsbury in Vermont, and of course, OKC HP Center in Oklahoma City as well. So this is a great option. There's a bright place for everyone. Ask questions, like contact these clubs. Is that program right for you? Is selection development camp right for you? We truly believe that there are options for everyone, and we're just trying to provide as many options as possible that are right for everybody's stage of development. Okay. What's great about the high performance clubs, the last thing I'll say about them is that, they all support post-collegiate training as well, which I think is an important part of the pathway. And I will have a webinar about that in March that I will preview a little bit later. All right, what if I want to go to trials? And Yosi, I'm going to call on you for this one because this is year 2 of where we've instituted time standards for the trials. So trials are going to be in West Windsor, New Jersey on Mercer, July 5th through 7th. Yosi, can you speak to why you added time standards?
Yeah, of course. The reason to use standards is basically it's very simple. You want to make sure that people are worthy to represent the United States and that they have a certain level. And it's not, if you look at this standards, it's a 1, 2, 3. Step 1, we look at under optimal weather conditions, what would be competitive standards. So what do you need to row to get onto the podium? For instance, men's single, it says 6:44. Okay, that's pretty fast, you would say. Well, that is true, but that's what is being done at the under 23 in average. And then you take all the averages of the times and you get kind of a competitive standard, which is basically the time that you need to row to get on the podium. Our requirement is not to get on the podium. Our requirement is to be competitive. And to be competitive means to be able to compete somewhere within a margin of 4 or 5% of the winners. So 4 or 5%, that's 20 seconds. Now imagine yourself in a race being 20 seconds behind number one. It's not that I'm asking you to be really, really up there for the podium, but I do think that in order to have an experience, you have to be in the race. When you're 20 seconds behind, you're not in the race. You're rowing a different contest. So in our perspective, to have it to make it a positive experience for everybody, we set a certain standard so we know our entire team is made up of athletes that have at least the minimum level that we think that is required to be competitive in those events. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, it also helps people to make choices, because no standards, then we kind of we spread thin. Everybody's looking for an event that is still open. Well, I don't think that's the best solution. What we shouldn't do is spread thin. What we should do is concentrate our talents in our best boats. So this is part of that, making sure that our best athletes get into the best boats and get the best of experience.
Thank you, Yosi. And so one thing I wanted to point out that within the U23 application, there are questions related to trials. If you think you may be going for a trials event, you can say yes, no, or maybe. Maybe is possibly, not sure. We want to know that information because since selection camp begins after trials, we want to know who of our camp invitees are potentially going to be qualifying through trials, because that may affect how we invite athletes. If you do not meet the time standard, you can still come to selection camp, but you need to have applied already. If you have not applied, we don't have any of your information, you haven't done any of the compliance requirements that are required for camp, and on the 7th, you call us up and say, I want to come to camp, that's going to be really difficult. So when in doubt, apply. Even if you are pretty sure you're going to go through trials, you're going to try to go through trials. But if you think you're going to be interested in selection camp, please make sure that you fill out the application. Next slide. What if my team goes to Henley Royal in July? We're seeing a lot more collegiate teams go on a consistent basis. And I think what's great about this summer, 2024, is you don't have to choose, because Henley Royal is July 2nd through 7th. And selection camp starts on the 10th. So similar to trials, on our application for U23 summer camps, we ask if you know if your team is going to be going to trials. I know that some may not know at this stage, but if you do know that your team is planning to go to trial, is going to be going to Henley, please indicate that on your application, just so we know, just so we're aware, but it is possible to do both. One question I've gotten is why we scheduled trials during Henley so that athletes can't do both. Why didn't we schedule the trial for, say, right after NCAAs or IRAs or an ACRA? Multiple reasons. We have time standards for a reason, as Yosi said. We want athletes to make those time standards. If you, by getting together a double, a four, a lightweight quad, have the ability to go that standard and be competitive, we want you to go to trials and we want you to do that. It's hard to do that if you just finished your end of season race. If you just came off of NCAAs, if you just came off of IRA or ACRA, that's difficult. So giving boats more time to train, potentially in a high performance club situation, gives them a better chance to qualify for trials, through trials. The other thing that I would say is that, we definitely want to make sure that we're developing athletes over the long term, and competing at NCAAs, IRAs, ACRA, then going straight to a trial, then potentially going to train for Henley with your team and go to Henley, and then having to go to selection camp right after that. That's a lot. All right. So you can't do all three, but you can do 2 out of 3. You can do Henley in camp or trials in camp. And we expect that we will see several people do that. Okay. I think I've talked enough about the application. Just want to say it one more time that the summer camp application includes both selection camp for sweep and scull and selection development camp. Fill that out as soon as you get off this webinar if you're interested, and then just keep those athlete metrics up to date. I'll mention that our director of para rowing, Ellen Minster, is also running a development camp for para rowing. If you qualify as a para athlete, this camp will lead into Canadian Henley and is designed for athletes that are seeking potentially going on for the LA 2028 cycle, because our PR3, 4, and many of our para events will already have been decided by then. So if you were interested in para rowing, please definitely look into this camp. And we did a webinar last night, an hour-long webinar that went into a lot of detail about this camp, and that recording will be posted by Friday. Big question we get, scholarships. Yes, the answer is yes. There are scholarships for both selection development and selection camp. How does that go? How does that work? Within the application, there is a slide that talks about, if you're interested, if you require scholarship to attend camp, please fill out this form, and it directs you to the United Rerow form that looks like this on the right-hand side here. What we ask you to provide in that form is an applicant essay, a family annual and monthly gross income, monthly gross expensive, and special family circumstances. So for example, like if your family income is pretty high, but there are lots of kids in your family and they're all in college, we want to know that. If your parents are not going to be supporting you financially in your bid to go to U23s, we want to know that. And lastly, we do ask for how much you are able to pay, because most of the scholarships that we will dole out will be partials. We give very few fulls, all right? So we ask that everybody to have some investment, but we do have some generous scholarship dollars available for all of our summer camps. I'll just briefly touch on how coaches can get involved. We do have several open positions for coaches. I know we had several coaches that are on this webinar right now. Most of them are in the U19 space for selection camp, selection development camp, and our youth development camp. But we do have a few that relate to the collegiate space that I'll talk about on the next slide. Level 2 is required for all coaches in the national team system at every level, U19 and U23 included. And level 3 is preferred. We're seeing a lot more people take level 3. I have some level 3 coaches in front of me right now, which is wonderful, and highly recommend it. It's a great program that gives you great networking and opportunities to grow your coaching. I am looking for 2 to 3 Pathways athlete developers. This is a small stipend role. It is not full-time. I would not even call it part-time. It is designed for people who want to get involved, want to help with recruiting athletes, promoting the Pathways program, and really are genuinely on board with the Pathways mission of long-term athlete development. Okay, so it's just a few $1,000s to help us recruit athletes and keep us in the know. I am only one person. Our U23 coaches, we don't have, it's not a huge group of people. We don't have an army going out and running ID camps right now. We need to start building that army. And so if you're interested in that, it's on the USRowing job site, and I hope to see some collegiate applications for that. So ideally, I'd love to have someone representing, the CRCA, the women's contingent, someone representing IRA, and then, potentially someone also from the ACRA space. Following, we are going to have a Coxen webinar on March 6th. More information on that to come. That'll be for U19 and U23 combined. And in March, I will also be scheduling a webinar that's detailing high performance clubs as well as post-collegiate training options, as there very well may be athletes on this call who are not eligible for U23s this summer and are looking for places to train and how to continue their careers, their rowing careers. There are no more questions. This is the Q&A portion, but I answered a couple questions as we went. It is 11 o'clock Eastern on the dot. Any final comments from any of our coaches? Go USA, maybe?
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, great. Yosi, any final words before we say goodnight?
You did a great job, Brett. Thank you, and thanks all for being present.
Yes. Thank you all for coming. We look forward to
Oh,
seeing.
you've got a question.
Oh, of course. Oh no, it says thank you for hosting. All right, great. Well, we will call it a night. Good night, everyone. Thank you for staying up with us. If you're on the East Coast, if you're on the West Coast, go get some dinner. And we look forward to seeing you all soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.